In the last episode, I spoke about how Porsche's questionable acquisition strategy led to their eventual acquisition by Volkswagen. What I did not say was that their relationship did not actually start in 2005 when Porsche began to acquire Volkswagen. In fact, it started more than 85 years earlier in 1933, and it was initiated by one of the most infamous people in world history. So let's go back in time. It is the end of the 19th century, a very interesting time in world history. For one, it was during this time in 1892 that the legendary American inventor and scientist Thomas Edison consolidated his various businesses to form the Edison General Electric, or as it's simply known today, General Electric. And no, he did not invent the electric light bulb. He instead made commercialization possible through the invention of a stable filament, which of course is a key part of the bulb. Fun fact, you might know that General Electric is of course one of the largest energy generation companies in the world. But did you also know that it is also one of the largest producers of aircraft engines and medical devices in the world? Anyway, back to the 19th century. It was also during this time in 1888 that Brazil abolished slavery, making it the last country in the Americas to do that. And it was during this time that the celebrated Dutch post-impressionist artist Vincent van Gogh, as the Brits call him, or Vincent van Gogh as the Americans do, completed his legendary painting Starry Night. Another fun fact, did you know that while he is now celebrated as one of the most iconic artists of all time, during his lifetime, Vincent van Gogh actually lived in abject poverty and struggled with mental illness. In fact, he cut off part of his own ear during one of his episodes. Anyway, while all of these events are interesting and noteworthy, this episode is actually about one seemingly inconsequential event that also happened in that period, specifically in April 1889. On a warm spring morning, a German customs officer and his wife received the birth of their baby boy after the death of their first 3 kids at infancy. This boy, Adolf Hitler, grew up to become one of the most influential political figures of the 1930s and 1940s, and is infamously remembered as perhaps the most ruthless dictator in world history. In fact, he is credited with instigating World War II with the infamous invasion of Poland in 1939. However, this video is not about his political ideologies or infamous actions. Instead, it's about his role in the initiation of what started out as a harmless business relationship between 2 of the largest automakers in the world at the time, and ultimately ended in the acquisition of one by the other about 86 years later. In 1934, as Chancellor of Nazi Germany, Hitler decided to make something he called the People's Car. By this, he meant that the car would be used by the commoners in Germany. And he had 3 key requirements for this car. One, it was to be affordable, which meant that it should not cost more than the price of a motorcycle at the time. 2, it must be practical, which meant that it should be able to accommodate 2 adults and 3 kids, which was the size of an average German family at the time. And 3, it was to be accessible. Remember that I earlier said that Volkswagen has always been a government favorite in Germany, and so quite naturally, Volkswagen was selected to produce this car. You see, all over the world, cars were a luxury at the time, afforded only by the rich. And Hitler wanted to give off a picture of Germany that was very luxurious, essentially where luxury was common. And that was the brainchild behind, the people's car, or as it was more commonly referred to, the Volkswagen Beetle. However, because of the engineering requirements of this car, he approached renowned automotive designer Ferdinand Porsche, who is, as you might have guessed, the founder of the Porsche Sports Company, one of the largest makers of luxury vehicles in the world. And while the car was produced, because of the commencement of World War II, which again Hitler is credited with instigating, no civilian actually received this Beetle car in his lifetime. Instead, the Beetle was redesigned to produce something called the Bucket, which was the military version of the car that was widely used by the Germans during World War II. It was not until the end of the war that civilian production of the Beetle began, and the first Germans received the Beetle car. After the success of this endeavor, Ferdinand Porsche remained in Hitler's good books. He even became a member of the Nazi party, Hitler's party, and helped him design many other military vehicles that were used by the Germans during World War II. And many of those cars were designed in collaboration with Volkswagen. So you understand why I find it very interesting that what started as a very harmless business relationship would result almost a century later in Porsche's questionable attempt to acquire Volkswagen and its eventual acquisition by Volkswagen. Now that you have this context, I think you should go back to rewatch episode 2 to understand properly how their financial dealing happened and why and how Porsche got acquired by Volkswagen. Oh, and if you're wondering if Ferdinand Porsche bore any repercussions for his involvement with Hitler during the World War, the answer is yes. He was imprisoned by the French for 20 months for his involvement in helping Hitler design, produce, and deploy military vehicles during the World War. He was actually never officially arraigned for any crimes against humanity, but he stayed in jail for 20 months. And even though he wasn't officially convicted, once he returned, he had to distance himself from the family business. And it was his son, Ferry Porsche, that grew the firm to what we now know to be the Porsche Sports Company. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this two-part series eyeballing these two automobile giants and their complicated corporate history. In the next episode, I'll be reviewing two seemingly rival firms and their interesting history. I think you'd like that even more. But for now, enough said. See you in the next episode and stay curious.